we are going to create the first carbon negative building in the next 18 months. We're going to demonstrate that the useful life of our buildings and the value that those represent far surpasses the amount of carbon that is required to actually build them.
This episode brought to you by Suites at Madison. Meeting and conference rooms for rent by the hour, week, month, or year. Suites at Madison, where business gets done. Check them out at www.downtowntampaoffice.com. Now, on to the show.
You are listening to the Invest Florida Real Estate Show, covering topics in lending, buy and sell strategies, property management, hot markets, and tips and tools to guide you along the way on your path to real estate success. You want Florida investment real estate talk? You have come to the right place. And now, our hosts, Eric Odom and Steven Silverman.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Invest Florida Real Estate Show. This is your co-host, Eric Odom, along with Steven Silverman.
Yeah, so here we are, sitting on a little raft in the middle of the ocean and wondering which ways the currents are going to take real estate. It's been a strange environment, Eric.
Yeah, I mean, I saw today we closed 6% on the 30-year, highest since 2008.
That's residential mortgages.
Residential. Right. I mean, you're seeing this filtered throughout really the market, right? With inflation and the Fed's trying to tamp this thing down and a lot of stuff going on. But I mean, it's undeniable. We're going to see it first. We always see it first in residential, right? Residential reacts the fastest because folks there they're payment buyers. And we've had historical low rates on 30 years. And now, people think, oh my gosh, 6%. I mean, 6%'s pretty
it's
good,
still great,
relatively.
But just think, just a couple of years ago, they were half that.
Yeah, it's true.
But here we're in this traditional cycle. We always talk about commercial real estate lagging residential. And I think we're seeing that again because I'm seeing some strange things. You're looking at like cap rates, still asking 6.5, but suddenly the mortgage rates are approaching close to that. And you just don't have that spread anymore, but there's still a shortage of supply.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of money chasing deals, right? So, the investor market's still going strong. Folks think that the mortgage rates are tied to the cap rates. They're really not that highly correlated. They're really not.
No, but you always look at it as a rough guide. You want to know that you're borrowing money at a certain rate and what kind of a return will you get. Just traditionally, they just never seem to be that close.
Yeah, I mean, you had situations in Europe. It's been going on for a while with, it's now changed, but with negative interest rates, people are paying, I mean, it's insane. Negative interest rates and
paying the bank to keep your money.
And paying the bank to keep your money, depositing money in there and paying the bank to keep the money. And, the spreads on some of this stuff were pretty absurd. So we're definitely in an upside down world. We've been in an upside down world. And a lot of COVID stimulus, a lot of Fed action, really starting in 2008 has certainly the stock market very concerned. And I saw the other day, Stephen, that the shorting and puts bought in the market were 3 times higher than the collapse of 2008.
Wow, that's astounding.
Astounding. It's astounding primarily the aggressiveness of wanting to short the market and the feeling from the professional institutional investors of what they think's coming. So
yeah, because they talk of that classic rebound, but at the same time saying it's a false rebound.
Yeah, I mean, look, I wish I had a crystal ball. I wouldn't be sitting here with you. I'll tell you that.
I'll take that with a pinch of salt.
So we got a great guest today talking about something a little bit different. Y'all are going to have to, get out of the box, put your thinking caps on. This is a little bit different than what you guys are used to hearing. It's not going to be for everybody. If you're looking for stuff infill in downtown Miami, this is not going to be the episode for you. But if you're looking at trying to do some off-grid Airbnbs or other types of off-grid real estate options of housing and structure investments, this might be something worth taking a peek at, Stephen. So is there anything else we want to talk about before we roll into our guest?
I think rolling into our next guest is pretty appropriate. Today we have with us David Atkinson. David is the CEO and founder of zSphere. zSphere is a completely different kind of real estate company, and it is especially relevant in today's world with global warming and the environment changing and threats to real estate and the way we live. David, welcome to the Invest Florida show.
Thank you for having me. Nice to be here.
And David, I understand that you are 30-plus year entrepreneur, and you've been involved in real estate for some time. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are now?
Yeah, certainly. So I am one of those very unusual entrepreneurs that has an extremely diverse background. I've done everything from being a commercial fisherman on some of the harshest waters and regions of the world to a 25 plus year information technology veteran building some of the largest computing platforms in the world. So I've got an incredibly diverse skill set and exposure that in hindsight, I've been working on the zSphere for over 10 years now, 2 to 3 of those now full time as we're in formal late stages of our formal startup mode. And one thing, hindsight is always 20/20. And when I look back at my early life experiences before zSphere, it's become very obvious to me that those experiences were necessary in order for me to maximize the value of zSphere for our upcoming clients. And I've got quite a bit of background in construction and construction technologies, whether it's materials or energy efficiency and HVAC systems, concrete, whatever it may be. Today, myself and my team are very focused on working with clients, not only in terms of zSphere and our, incredibly resilient buildings and off-grid buildings, but also working with many clients on residential, commercial, and other, builds of significant size when it comes to utilizing alternative materials such as light gauge steel framing, whether it's walls, floor trusses, roof trusses, alternative floor sheathing and roof sheathing technologies. You've got things like USG Structocrete that's out there that has started to be used widely in commercial structures where, historically you've had to use, gypcrete. You've got a significant weight reduction and it's much more efficient in terms of the timeliness of the builds and other benefits. So quite a bit of background in construction and, not so much on the sales of real estate and managing real estate, but certainly on the construction and development side.
So David, with all that background and for our listeners, can you just give a brief summary of what zSphere is? Yes.
So we put to task, many years ago on solving some very specific problems. And what we've learned is that the 3 major problems that are part of our mission and that we've set out to solve, and frankly, we have solved them. We've got the finest minds in the world, everything from NASA scientists, and I'm not joking when I say that, all the way through some of the finest financial operations and construction members on our team. And we're really going after and tackling 3 major problems that have really revealed themselves more so in the last several years in terms of their importance of attacking these head on. And those problems are, first, we're here to save lives. Especially, where our focus and our greatest value proposition is in disaster-prone areas. And so we're here to save lives, but we're also going to show that we are, and we're going to demonstrate this, that we're the only insurable flood and hurricane resilient buildings available for disaster-prone. We're going to start disaster-prone zip codes here in the U.S. We do have intentions to go international, but right now we're starting out in the U.S. markets, domestic U.S. and Puerto Rico, with expansion plans quickly in other Caribbean nations. And then the second problem that we're out to solve is to demonstrate and with provable, measurable data that we are going to create the first carbon negative building in the next 18 months. And what I mean by that is that the amount of energy and let's say, petroleum-based fuels, just net energy that's required to manufacture one of our buildings, we're going to demonstrate that the useful life of our buildings and the value that those represent far surpasses the amount of carbon that is required to actually build them. And we are going to do that on a provable basis in a completely circular fashion, 100% end-to-end.
So let's start from a 30,000 foot level. These are self-contained, off-grid spheres, right? That's the primary product. Is that accurate?
They are, yes. What we did was we've taken as a foundation, geodesic architectures, which have been proven for decades in terms of their military applications, the harshest environment applications, whether it's in the Arctic or Antarctica, wherever it is. Geodesic designs have proven themselves in the harshest of conditions. So there was nothing to prove there in terms of the actual architecture. But what we did is we put a little bit of a spin on it. And what we did was I happen to have quite a bit of experience in the insurance industry. And, a derivative of the problems that we're solving is, floodwater damage from natural disasters. Oftentimes it's upwards and over 80% of the financial cost, replacement cost during a natural disaster. I'm sure your audience has a lot of experience with that, if not in Florida, certainly other, Gulf communities or wherever it may be. And so we directly address the flood problem in hurricane and flood prone areas. And how we do that is the Z-sphere is a spherical structure. It's completely round and it's elevated. It's off the ground and not like your typical, stilt homes that are, 12 or more feet off the ground. We're just, a few feet off the ground at the lowest point of the sphere. And the sphere is watertight. So regardless of wind-driven rain or floodwater, whatever it may be, our standard sphere and structural base will accommodate 5 to 6 foot of storm surge or standing floodwater. And we have a design in development. We've been watching the more recent hurricanes and especially with the likes of Abaco Island and Hurricane Dorian. Not a lot of people know that Abaco Island in many places experienced a 16 to 21 foot storm surge during that hurricane. Because Hurricane Dorian sat on Abaco Island in the Bahamas for 24 hours, the amount of storm surge that it was able to pull into that area was massive. In fact, that's where most of the loss of life came from, was people drowning because they didn't anticipate that level of storm surge.
So, David, the Z-sphere that you've invented, it's a new type of real estate structure. Is it a response? Is it intended as a response to some kind of a natural disaster, or is it intended as something to develop and to live in and to work in and to be ready for any kind of, be impervious to an environmental disaster?
Yeah, great question. It's intended to address both. There's a tremendous amount of undeveloped real estate that's out there today, that exists in disaster-prone areas. We've spoken with many investors that would love to invest in properties, but they're concerned about, whether it's insurability or vulnerability to, damage and disruption, from hurricanes or floods, whatever it may be. And so we address both of those scenarios. If we have Katrina or if we have another widespread disaster, we are certainly going to work with property owners, the municipalities, whoever it may be, business owners, to quickly come in and provide them with structures that are going to be resilient to future disasters. We've seen in many cases where a building gets wiped out, they build it back more or less the same way, and then a hurricane comes, through 7 to 10 years later and wipes it out again. And so the Z-Sphere is intended to break that cycle and provide our clients with a level of investment protection, whether it is as a result of a widespread damage from a storm, or if they're taking a more proactive approach and have a few acres somewhere and want to develop several Airbnbs or a small hotel type of operation and hospitality. The Z-Sphere is the ideal solution for that. Being able to not only withstand, the hurricanes and such, but because of our off-grid capabilities with power and water and such, give them a level of continuity that other hospitality providers in the area would not be able to provide.
Yeah, and I wonder about like some of the barrier islands and things that nothing ever would be built there because it's just not terribly practical. I wonder if it would be suitable for that. I mean, you have areas down around Everglades City in the very southern tip of Florida that are prone to flood. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be a hurricane. So I'm curious about those. So you would, I think they're kind of cool. Like you look at them and they're, they have these giant like old wine barrels and for Airbnbs in Austria. And it's kind of an unusual look. I could see that people go, oh, this is kind of cool. You could create a theme around that. I wonder if that's what it's for. Like, let's say it's on one of the barrier islands where nothing else is getting built. They are self-contained, right? I mean, could it be used there?
They are self-contained, and that's a great point. So we are targeting those very unique places to build. Our access and the way that you access the sphere is elevated. So, much like you've seen, whether it's in the Maldives or, other Caribbean islands, oftentimes you have this, dock or deck system where you have elevated access above the water to access all of the, respective structures. And absolutely, we foresee that very type of design in the areas that you're speaking of.
Well, that would be actually really cool. I mean, you see really unusual structures. You talk about the Maldives. They're built up above on stilts and give people access to areas that ordinarily wouldn't make a lot of sense to build a traditional brick and mortar structure. Go ahead, Steve, you can say something.
So do I understand that your product is completely built out in a factory and then shipped out to wherever it's going to be installed, or is there work done on site?
Yes, so there's a few phases associated with our build. So as we go to market and deliver our first units, we'll be building 20 to 25 units here in 2023 and delivering those to clients. Those will be built in a very conventional fashion, piece by piece. But in tandem with that, we're in the process of we're identifying our first factory location. And what that factory does is that provides us the ability to not only provide units in volume, but think of us as more a modular builder where we will actually pre-build the spheres to a certain level of completion. Depending on the size, it can be 100% complete, or if it's one of our larger spheres, a percentage complete, maybe 50, 60% just because of the weight. And then we have a very unique system in which we deliver our units to our customers. We have a team that goes.
I figured you're going to tell us now you have a team that's going to roll it down the hill, or maybe you can.
No, not quite that novel. So we pre-build them in a factory. We have a team that goes out and based on a development plot, we have 5 footings per sphere. So what happens is We have a team, they go out, they put the footings in place on the site. We don't require extensive excavation or bulldozing or anything like that. So our time to develop properties is much shorter. And we're very big on preserving ecology and not disrupting the natural ecology that tends to be in some of these pristine Caribbean, locations, and certainly the barrier islands and others where there's very sensitive habitat. So we're very non-disruptive. Our teams go out, they put the 5 footings in place. We have some structural steel that goes on top of those and gets set in a particular way. And then what we do is from our factory, we actually airlift with a heavy lift helicopter, or we transport by barge our units, near the destination site, or we take it directly to the destination site. We set it on those structural steel components. There's a few connectors that get connected and fastened, and literally an hour later, a Category 5 hurricane can come through, and that investment is going to be safe and protected. That's the level of resilience and level of change that we're bringing to the market in those disaster-prone areas.
Now, this is not a housing unit that it's going to get plopped on Beach Drive in St. Pete.
Absolutely not.
It's got a particular look. Yeah, it's got a particular look. It's not going to meet architectural standards. So we mentioned barrier islands. We mentioned maybe some low-lying areas that maybe is not really buildable, but a nice view of the ocean. Maybe it's close to a beach or whatever it might be that could be good for Airbnb. What about, could you foresee this as replacements for trailers, perhaps like double wides, mobile homes, like out on pasture land? You build it maybe large enough, because if you don't have electricity on some of these areas, and this is self-contained, then you don't need to run, water, sewer, electric. Is that fair to say?
That's right, Eric. Right now, the only thing that we don't have 100% off grid, and this is only from a development and a code perspective. Currently, codes are changing rapidly in this space. The only place that we don't have a truly standalone solution is for our black water yet, but we're coming with that very soon. We're in development of that right now. So what that means is,
Steve was looking at me quizzically. But for people that don't know, black water.
I figured it's after Eric has a shower, but I wasn't really sure what.
Well, that's gray water, Stephen. Gray water is the black water is something that's a little filthier. It's a little filthier. It's what you pick up from your dog every morning at 7 o'clock when you take her for her first walk. That's the black water.
Right. So, from a wastewater, from a toilet water perspective, right, we are building a solution that will be fully self-contained. So, if we're unable to put in, a small septic or whatever is required for code, then as soon as we have that system developed, we will be able to go in places where, you don't even have that external need anymore.
Let's talk about it as a trailer alternative. I see most of these on your website. They tend to be almost like studios. They are literally spheres. They're like basketballs, big basketballs.
Yes. So we have 3 standard sizes. And those sizes range anywhere from our 20-foot unit, which think of that as a studio apartment, 550, 600 square feet. Our mid-size unit is our 30-foot unit, and that's about 1,000 square feet. And then we have a 50-foot unit that's over 3,000 square feet. That's really intended for more commercial and municipal and hospitality type applications, but I'm sure we will have some clients that would like to use it as a residence and have a larger amount of square footage, certainly.
The 50-foot or 3,000 square foot, you said it's a large family retreat, et cetera, medium-sized office. Can you do restaurant with this? Because that's kind of an interesting thing too. It might be a theme that could be built in certain places around that.
Absolutely, Eric, 100%. One of the other challenges that we address, in disaster-prone areas is, oftentimes when these large hurricanes make landfall, what winds up happening is literally destroys all of the micro services of a community, right? The restaurants, the doctors, Sure. the dentists, the, whatever, the dry cleaners, the whatever it might be. And so what winds up happening is people, after a disaster like that, people leave because it takes years to restore those types of micro services. So in our case, it's a strategic advantage for a business owner to, embrace and utilize the Z-Sphere as a business building, not only for the novelty, as you mentioned, but also as a competitive advantage when hurricanes strike. If you're the only doctor in business, that's a competitive advantage, where all the others might not have power or whatever it might be.
So can I ask the $64,000 question, or maybe it's the $1 million question, but what does this price structure work out for as compared to regular building? I mean, I assume it has to be a lot more. You've got a lot more in there.
Yeah, it's a different value structure and value proposition. So it's not a price per square foot conversation. First of all, because we're talking about a round building versus a square rectangular shaped building. So there's differences there. We think more in terms of cubic feet, instead of square footage, and how we use the interior of the sphere. But getting to your question, our base unit, our 20-foot unit starts off at, and we don't have published pricing yet, so this is not published anywhere, but our 20-foot base model starts at $250,000, and that's an installed price. And then they go up from there in terms of level of off-grid capabilities and sophistication and details. So very, very affordable in the grand scheme of things when it comes to the value proposition that it provides.
So Airbnb's possibly, it could be potentially suitable if areas where there's not utility services. It's perhaps also hospital and medical as emergency backup. Is that accurate?
It is. In fact, our first few projects on the island of Puerto Rico, our first project that we're getting ready to go to contract on is a couple acres on a pristine mountaintop next to the El Yunque rainforest in Rio Grande, Puerto Rico. And our client is going to have us build 6 30-foot units that are going to exclusively be Airbnbs. They've done all the economics and the math and everything else. And right now, at the current rates that they can economize them with, they're looking at anywhere from a 3 to a 3.5 year turn on it.
Wow.
So yeah, very good economics in terms of Airbnb, as well as you mentioned the emergency facilities, things like that. We're working closely and have signed memorandums of understanding with several municipalities. They see the value in us providing them Z-Spheres for emergency command and recovery type of operations, not only during a hurricane, but certainly after, having a facility that has reliable power, water, working, toilets, showers, and communications is meaningful to municipalities in being able to support recovery operations.
Sure. I think military, first responder would be other options too. Interesting.
That's correct.
Okay. Stephen, this has been good stuff, man. Do you have some additional questions?
Yeah. So are there opportunities for investors to participate in this besides going the real estate route?
Because they can buy, they can buy one.
They can buy spheres.
Yeah, they can buy spheres. And if there's any other ways, I guess is what you're asking, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you for asking. So, currently we're in late startup mode, and we do have, funding that's lined up. But as with any business that's associated with real estate, there's always new projects, there's always funding opportunities that arise. or funding requirements that are always there. We have an active accredited investor offering out there right now, and we are looking for investors, to participate, upwards of $5-10 million if they so choose. We will take on smaller investors, 50, 100,000, depending on their level of desire to invest in us. But at the end of the day, we do have that offering. It is active. Again, it's for accredited investors only. And I can certainly share details for anyone that's interested.
Okay. So if people want to learn a little bit more or contact you or talk about a deal, how can they reach you?
Yeah, the best way to reach me is, send me a message on LinkedIn. That is our primary conduit for, social media and getting the word out on zSphere. Our website is myzsphere.com, M-Y, the letter Z and the word sphere.com. Feel free to use our contact form to reach out to us, and we'll certainly get back to you right away. And would love to engage your listeners in one of the many ways that we've talked about.
David, really appreciate your time today. Stephen, anything else before we let David go?
No, awesome, David. Thank you very much.
Stephen and Eric, thank you again for having us.
And that was David Atkinson from zSphere. Stephen, what were your thoughts?
So I thought it was fascinating because the building of structures for real estate, we still follow the traditional model that goes back 1,000 years. We go on site and build something. And I've always wondered why there isn't other ways or more ways to build pre-construction. We've made great strides, but, this is an innovative approach to it. But what's so interesting about it is to be able to build a structure that's hurricane-proof and also flood-proof, especially facing the challenges we have now with global warming and environmental challenges. It's a whole new world.
Well, I'm really going to be interested to hear how they handle the Blackwater situation. Obviously, if you're going into remote areas, he talked about building or installing really units in Puerto Rico, and it's in a remote area. It probably doesn't have electricity, the electricity can be dealt with. The water. We didn't really talk about that either, did we? We should have asked him more about how he's getting fresh water, because that's another interesting point. Is he collecting rainwater? Oh gosh, we should have asked that question. But certainly he said that he's got a solution for the sewer, and trying to figure out how to process that. And I wonder if it's compostable type of system. I don't know. But we'll take a look at the website. We'll leave it on there, and you guys can do some research about how that's going to happen. But it certainly leaves some options available for the Airbnb folks who want to get into remote, pristine areas that, there's maybe it's a little tougher to get in with the roads, and obviously it's not sewer and electric and water and other utilities. So it's good stuff. Good stuff for people trying to be creative. People want to connect with nature and getting into areas that aren't necessarily completely developed yet, and want to be able to allow people to experience, the beautiful surroundings. So anyway, Stephen, anything else before we sign off for the day?
Yes. Remember to go back to other episodes that we have on our website to go through our archives and see all the other fascinating guests that we've had and help build our encyclopedia of commercial real estate and real estate.
Guys, as always, we appreciate the time that you invest with us each and every episode. And until next time, hasta la vista.
You've just listened to the Invest Florida podcast with Eric Odom and Stephen Silverman. Join us every week for actionable real estate investment ideas, and of course, visit our website at www.investfloridashow.com for more shows and tips on how to earn a cash flow in the real estate market in Florida. While hosts and producers of the Invest Florida show have no reason to doubt the validity of comments of our guests, we do not warranty their accuracy. Please check with your legal, financial, and tax advisors before entering into any investment. Returns will vary from person to person and deal to deal based on unique circumstances. All information expressed in this show is for educational purposes only. Opinions of the guests are not necessarily shared by the hosts and producers of the Invest Florida show.